Hey, family, what's going on? My name's Matt Williams. I am the founder of I'm So Newark. I'm So Newark is a media organization where we focus on positive things happening in and around Newark, New Jersey. We like to spotlight, unlike major media companies like CNN, ABC, CBS, we like to highlight and spotlight positive things like community, what's happening in the community. We like to spotlight local artists, especially. We like to spotlight residents, economic development, education that's happening in our city, anything that's positive that's happening in the city of Newark, New Jersey and surrounding areas. We also have a couple other components to I'm So Newark, and one is our prison reentry. Really, we're starting from the ground floor with this. We have taught a couple classes at Essex County College under Cobblestone Multimedia. We taught men and women that were in halfway houses who signed up for the program how to use camera, different settings on the camera, ISO, f-stop, shutter speed. We taught them how to capture still images. We taught men and women coming back into society from penal institution, how to write stories, how to tell stories. We taught them journalism. We taught them about media, news, that type of thing, and how to tell a story. A lot of men and women, the reason we want to do this, because we know a lot of men and women coming out of prison have stories to tell. A couple of my friends had stories to tell. I met with Sharp James, and he wrote a book. And when I met up after he served his time, I met up with him, and he actually, a former Mayor Sharp James, he came to me and said, "Hey, I got this book, and I need to transcode." And he had a lot written down on like toilet tissue and paper. So we had to take his writings and digitize them, and put them on a computer. And we initiated that process and helped him initiate the process of transcribing his information that he had written down already into a digital form, and then he ran with it from there. So it's in our heart to help people tell stories. I truly believe that once someone get into the art of filmmaking and expressing themselves through digital and new media, it's a whole new world out there. And I've heard men and women who've come back, who left the halfway house, see me on the streets, capturing images for I'm So Newark, grab me, hug me, and thank me for the art that they said we imparted to them. But to tell the truth, I believe this art is in all of us. All of us want to tell a story, or I believe that most of us want to be heard. So that's a little bit about I'm So Newark. I'm So Newark. You can find us on Facebook, I'm So Newark, Instagram, I'm So Newark, or imsonewark.org. I'm also the web administrator for that site. So it's kind of like I'm the barber's hair is never cut. Our website needs some help. So, just go, bear with us, check our website out, imsonewark.org. And that's what we do. One more thing we did was Family Community Fun Day. And that was an opportunity, and we invited men and women who came through the program to come and capture images of the community getting together, having fun, handing out food to the community. But the main reason was to get them there I had maybe about 2 people there that had came through the program that actually captured images for that event. So they were actually doing journalism, that day, which was awesome. And it was awesome seeing them. So that's what we do. Matt, DV, I'm So Newark. Thanks for having us out. Peace.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone see me fine and hear me? All right, yeah. Great. So thank you, Matt, for that. That's really beautiful and powerful work that you're doing. I truly appreciate all of the work that you're putting in to Newark. And so, I think in a similar vein, we're going to have a conversation today with between myself and Russell Craig and James Yaya Huff and Mary Baxter about some of the ways that creativity and artwork has kind of sustained us and their practice while incarcerated, and also, you know, some of the things that have kind of shifted and changed shape after coming home, right? And so, yeah, we're gonna have a conversation today. It's gonna be kind of organic in nature. So we've all kind of worked together for a number of years now. I myself am a formerly incarcerated artist. I'm also a curator, and I've been working closely with Craig now for probably like 8 or 9 years, and also Mary for probably 3 or 4, and recently Yaya the past couple of years. And so we all know each other and have worked together. But I'm gonna read everyone's bio real quick, and then I think we can just kind of jump into questions and start the conversation. I also want to thank the Newark Museum for having us. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to be here, to be able to speak with your audience, and truly appreciate you opening up the format for that. So Mary Enoch Elizabeth Baxter is an award-winning Philadelphia-based artist who creates socially conscious music, film, and visual art through an autobiographical lens. Although it has been a decade since her release from a Pennsylvania prison, Mary's time spent on the inside continues to shape the direction of her art and practice. Her entertaining but poignant works offer a critical perspective on the particular challenges women of color face when they become immersed in the criminal justice system. Her work has been exhibited at venues including MoMA PS1, the African American Museum of Philadelphia, Eastern State Penitentiary, Ben & Jerry's Factory in Waterbury, Vermont, and HBO's The OG Experience at Studio 525 in Chelsea. Mary is also a 2017 Soze Rate of Return Fellow, a 2018 and 19 Mural Arts Philadelphia Reimagining Reentry Fellow, a 2019 Leeway Foundation Transformation Awardee, and a 2021 Ed Trust Justice Fellow, and a 2021 Freeze Impact Prize Award winner. She is moving and shaking clearly from that bio. And Russell Craig is a painter from Philadelphia who is now living in New York City. He is one of the co-founders of the Rate of Return USA, the first national fellowship dedicated solely to supporting formerly incarcerated artists across the country. Craig is a self-taught artist who survived nearly a decade of incarceration after growing up in the foster care system. Craig creates art as a means to explore the experience of overcriminalized communities and to reassert agency after a lifetime of institutional control. His work has also been shown at MoMA PS1, the African American Museum, and a number of other venues across the country. He has also been featured in Art Forum, Art News, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, and he is a 2017 Rate of Return Fellow and a 2018 Ford Foundation Art for Justice Fellow. And last but not least is James Yaya Huff, who lives and works in Pittsburgh, PA. For over a decade, James has been heavily involved with Mural Arts Philadelphia. Since working with Mural Arts, James has created over 50 works that have been installed in Philadelphia State Correctional Institution Graterford and State Correctional Institution Phoenix. In 2019, as a part of a program supported by the Art for Justice Fund and Fair and Just Prosecution, Huff was selected to be the inaugural artist in residence at the Office of the District Attorney of Philadelphia. Most recently, Huff's work has been included in Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, curated by Dr. Nicole Fleetwood at MoMA PS1. His work has also been featured in Art Forum, Dissent Magazine, the New York Times, PBS NewsHour, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and Philadelphia Magazine. So that is a very long list of accomplishments since everyone has come home, relatively in a short time, which is actually quite amazing. But I do want to kind of start the conversation, and I think this is just kind of across the board for everyone to respond. I'm actually really curious to hear about the ways that both art and community kind of served as acts of resistance while incarcerated, and kind of how artwork facilitated that resistance. In what ways did it facilitate that, and how did it kind of function? So I don't know who wants to kind of take that first and run with it.
Well, I know for me, you know, that's a great question. First of all, I want to say thank you to the Newark Museum of Art for allowing this forum to take place. Thank you, Jesse, and thank my other panelists, my friends, as well as fellow artists and peers. You know, I definitely think that community is important in shaping the practice of art, particularly in what we do. um, our art is heavily laced with a social change imperative and mission, right? So you can't have social change without community as the foundation of it. To me, that's always been important. Over the course of 27 years of incarceration, my practice evolved from an individual creating art to a artist seeking community and seeking to build community within the prison system, with my peers and with my fellow prisoners, and figuring out that art is integral to everything that goes on in community. Art is integral in the life of each individual, and art is also integral in the life of, or in the process of various projects that people want to accomplish to improve community within the prison and outside of the prison. So with me, they're integral, and as an artist, it shapes you in a most positive way. It gives you purpose inside of your practice. Because I think it's important. Aesthetically, you can be creating great things, but I believe if purpose is lacking, then I think there's always going to be something missing that really ties your art into the times that you live in.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
No, I was just agreeing with Yaya, with James. So it's all yours.
Absolutely. Again, I want to just echo James. Thanks so much to Newark, Jesse, for inviting us, this panel. Creating space for such an important conversation, and I'm just really honored to be here and share. So, for me, as a formerly, incarcerated person, my incarceration totally shapes my art and my practice. Being on the inside, you're stripped of a lot of things. And in turn, you're just a number, but being able to create was something that couldn't be taken away. And it gave me an opportunity to assert my agency, but also reclaim my identity. Because when you're forced to survive under those conditions, it's difficult. And being a woman and serving time while pregnant, and subsequently having to give birth while incarcerated, it was the only thing that helped me process that trauma and connect my story to, the stories of so many other women who go nameless and voiceless, and really be, someone that could speak to that in a creative way that could pull people in with artistry. It's just been, a blessing.
And I would say lastly, on that topic, that I feel as though that community was like very important for my art practice on the inside, because it was a few institutions, because I was in quite a few, and sometimes I would find myself alone in my practice. But once I went to Greaterford, where I did the majority of my time, and I had met James, he was basically like the connection to the community, because he was already there for a number of years and knew a lot of the other artists that was also there for a number of years. And that's basically how I was led into that community that basically was like continuous, in which we would like converse and things like that. They would share techniques, because these guys was like doing works and practices and things that was like new to me. Like pastels was introduced to me from James and another gentleman that was in the inside. So the community was really important, because even once I left prison, like I kept like the passion for art strong within me, and like who knows if without the community, you know, I will always be an artist, but it was very helpful to have other artists around that was like practicing as well, and it kind of blocked out like the craziness that happens in prison. We really like, and then when you get rough for yourself, you can go to your fellow artists and like just get lost in the art, have the conversation about art, practicing art, show what you did and things like that. So community was very important. And then after I left, I joined forces with Jesse, and continued that kind of a like practice of not being alone, having like a team. And then Mary came along. We all united, you know, a community.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's really interesting in some ways to think about, because I mean, I've thought about this before, because I actually went to school for art before I got indicted, right? And so I had a little taste of like a different artist community before I went into the prison system through the education program. And, you know, while like I learned techniques and, you know, learned from my professors, the sense of connection, I think, and like the almost collaborative way of supporting each other was, at least among my peers at that school, was largely absent. It was kind of like individual artists making their own work, and we would kind of have crits and feedback, but it wasn't the same type of like supportive structure system that I found when I was incarcerated, where people were just like deeply engaged in, you know, trying to see other people do well and giving information and basically mentoring and helping each other kind of grow as artists. And so I guess a part of that conversation is like, you know, working within prisons and working with like very limited materials. It seems like community becomes very important. I'm wondering if you guys have like picked up on anything, like has community kind of shifted for you since you've come home from prison? Like as you've kind of all kind of entered into the art world, like has your sense or identity or formation around communities kind of shifted in any ways that are perceivable, or has it largely remained the same? I'm just curious the dichotomy between like how things function when we were incarcerated versus like now that we're home.
Right. I would agree. I mean, you know, being home, you're just privy to a lot more resources and the opportunity to connect with so many various groups of people. But, you know, for me, I've definitely tried to maintain a connection with women who are incarcerated or women who have been impacted by incarceration, you know, through my work as a teaching artist, which, you know, entails like me revisiting the prison where, you know, I was housed and, you know, experienced all the things that I now advocate, you know, for, which is, you know, reproductive justice and creating, you know, quality art programs for women who are incarcerated. So maintaining that community and that connection, and you know, sharing my success with the women on the inside and inspiring and continuing to motivate them. I don't think that has changed. But, you know, like I said, there are, you know, other formerly incarcerated artists like you guys too, where, you know, this community keeps growing, and then creating work that's attached to larger, you know, policies around reproductive justice and ending mass incarceration and abolition. I just think that the community has grown, but I'm still, you know, very much in touch and in conversation with those on the inside as much as those on the outside. Because you have to bring in other players, you have to bring in legislators, you have to bring in policymakers, community leaders. So it just becomes like this group effort to shift culture and see the change that we all so desperately want.
So with you know, in the past, you know, roughly 2 years, you know, my experience in returning to the community that I'm presently in, but generally speaking, dealing with community members from different cities. And when I do a comparison of artists who are formerly incarcerated or I was incarcerated with. Shout out to, you know, the artists that I was incarcerated with at SCI Greaterford and SCI Phoenix. You know, I find the energy in society lacking. And, you know, one of the main reasons that I've sort of concluded, you know, come to that conclusion is based on that the incarcerated artists and the formerly incarcerated artists as well, they create out of a strong motive of desperation, survival, and also bonding, right? In society, what I've come to experience, and I don't know if this is universal, this is very specific to me, but I've come to experience the almost opposite, right? You know, there's this vague relationship with art. It doesn't have the same force and vigor, and it definitely doesn't have a strong connection to, you know, the life of an individual, you know, or the life of the artist who's creating it. And also the artists themselves sort of seem, you know, somewhat fragile. You know what I mean? Not to be pejorative, but, you know, they seem kind of fragile, where, you know, most of the incarcerated artists I've dealt with and been had the pleasure of working with and collaborating with and just being around, very hardy, very, very solutionist oriented. You know, their thinking is always solution oriented, and, you know, the spirit that they move and create from. And this is also poets and writers as well. You know, the spirit that they create from is so strong and filled with so much resistance and life that is incomparable. So when I've come into the society, you know, I didn't necessarily expect to see the same thing, but I was kind of crestfallen. You know, I was kind of disappointed. You know what I mean? Because I didn't see anything even close, you know, to the type of creative force that I had witnessed over 2 decades. You know, the type of almost weapon-like creativity. You know what I mean? You know, and then to come into society and see a very almost docile to a large extent sort of approach to the arts. You know what I mean? And you know, it shocked me a little bit, and then I was kind of disappointed. Then I sort of have regrouped and, you know, sought to find solutions, you know, in my dealings with artists and community. And this is also in dealing with projects that are sort of art light. So, you know, like community farming, community gardening, et cetera. You know, I just think the force that I've seen applied, you know, has always been or has been kind of less life filled, less force filled. And I'm so used to seeing that sort of aggressiveness within the prison system attached, the aggressiveness that's attached to creativity, you know, being so used to that aggressiveness accompanying the creativity, and then seeing that sort of bottom fall out when I've returned to society has been interesting. It's been very interesting.
For myself, I'll be brief. I see it to be similar to what I community in comparison to like outside and the community that was inside. And I think it's because how discerning I am in my selection of who I choose as community. So like I say it's very similar, because then once I gets out, only thing that changes will be the different people in the community would be like the addition of like Mary, the addition of Jesse into my like community that I like built, you know. And then I never lost touch with like James. So even when he was inside, it always was like a connection. So that's how it is. And these are the people that I reach out to when I need advice and things like that. And just like on the inside, the guys that was in the foolishness, I wouldn't be a part of that. And that's why I was good. They had community of positive thinkers and creative people, things like that, because it kind of distracts you from like the foolishness. So that same like practice continues on the outside. So it's just, for me, it was just very similar, because that's just like how I like to operate.
And I think like there's like a common thread that seems to kind of run throughout all three. And it's like, there's a sense of urgency, I think, in the work that's being produced, and a very strong sense of community while people are incarcerated. And that urgency in some ways, at least to, and this will kind of go into the next question, is like, you know, I think it speaks to the importance of having formerly incarcerated leadership around issues of incarceration, right? So like if we are talking about, or a museum or an exhibition is talking about X, Y, or Z as it relates to mass incarceration, it's really important to have not just artists, but any authentic person or voice who has had that experience to be a part of those conversations, whether it's policy change and advocacy or it's art related, right? And so I think like that deeply felt kind of urgency and passion is something that everyone brings to the table in a way, kind of like what Yaya, I think, was speaking about in that, you know, there is very kind of solution-based problem solving skill sets that forms when we're incarcerated, because again, we have to work, or we all had to work around very limited materials under situations where everything is designed to basically destroy you, distract you, or stop you from pretty much doing anything productive or positive. And so as human beings, we've had to kind of work our ways around these very intense systems. And so that kind of leads into my next question is like, I'm actually curious if you guys could talk a little bit about some of the work that you're making now. And I'm also curious, well, actually some of the work that you've made while incarcerated and like, I guess while you're incarcerated or since coming home, that like, and how you see it kind of serving in that role of narrative change and shifting the culture, as kind of Mary said, because, you know, we're not just artists, we are all kind of like trying to make work around an issue that we care very deeply about. And so I'm curious if each of you can kind of elaborate a little bit about the work either that you've done while incarcerated or since coming home that seeks to do like narrative change and functions as advocacy on behalf of certain issues. And I know you've all addressed a number of issues through a number of projects, so kind of whatever you feel talking about.
I can go quickly. So like, because it's funny because like you already know that I'm like in the process of like exploring like a new approach with like this new work that I'm working on. So which is similar to the old work, but it's just like a new component that's been incorporated that James and Jesse knows for years, because I was like for years using like a lot of analogies when I'm explaining something or when we're in conversation and things like that. So basically I'm like incorporating like comics, cartoons, movies, things from pop culture into like artwork dealing with like serious issues, social injustice and things like that. Because before I was a little heavy-handed on like the subject and using blood and things like that, like real blood, recreating a Rorschach psychiatric evaluation test and things like that. And it was just like a little heavy-handed and like re-traumatizing the people and things like that. So with this component of making the connection of like how like comic characters are like a cartoon, because art imitates life no matter like what art you use. So, and then I'm also a Bard student, and also like being around Jesse, we always would talk about like the connections, making the connections, because I think he learned that in college before I became a student. But Bard the same way, like we'll read different authors and things like that, a lot of Baldwin and things like that, and then the professor will have us make a connection to like another author that's like coming from a different time. It will, or well, you know, Baldwin was a black man and be a white woman, in which we would like find the connection. So that's what I'm doing. And then it's like, you know, a challenge to make it all work like harmony. And it was good that I had a studio visit yesterday with Catherine from Milan Gallery, and as I was explaining the work, it made me feel better, because I worry a lot that the people not going to get it, because it is my crazy I'm a little crazy for those who don't know me. Oh, that's what I hear. You know what I'm saying? So Jesse be like, no, you crazy. You know what I mean? So they get it because they hear it all the time and they know me. So I worry about like other people, like, is they going to get it? But it's not, I shouldn't even be putting that much worry. And then as I was explaining to her, she was loving it and wanted pieces that wasn't available because they already tied up in two. So it made me feel good to be like, okay, like she got it. And I explained it, like I explained all the work and she was just like excited. And even like the comics references and things that I would use that she wasn't familiar with, she loved it and Googled it real quick and then got familiar with it. You know what I mean? So it was like educational. Then I like explained to her crimes and things that happen to Black people by the hands of like white police and things like that, like the social injustice issues. She wasn't aware of like certain stories and things that I explained to her. So like she researched them. So it was like a lot of education involved. So I felt good about that because that's like the intention of the work, that you like enlighten people, that you know you teach, and hopefully create some change. So that's basically in a nutshell what I'm dealing with.
And I should expand. I think it's important for the audience who's watching this, because there's no images of our work, unfortunately. But I think even talking through like some of your materials, and you even touched on it briefly, where you said, you know, you used to use ox blood to make the Rorschach tests. But even in this piece, you're using leather. And I think that's really significant in some ways. So it's like certain use of materials in combination with this, I think also conveys a powerful message. And so I think for each of you moving forward, like talking about like your specific mediums as well. I don't know, Craig, if you want to kind of expand upon that in terms of like using the leather and like how you're using it.
Well, right now, the leather is like the main surface, if you will be like basically my canvas, and then like the painting on top of it will be like the characters or the subjects in which further like the narrative. But I also been incorporating lights, like these lights that you see right here on my wall. Like I put some of those lights into the work, and still working it out. And the lights for me represents like your mind, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the thought process and the activity of the brain, like, you know, it lights up when they put like the monitor on your head. So all of my pieces is basically the body, like the blood is the blood being spilled by like um racist police, and that's why I use the blood to emphasize like blood being spilled, and use actual blood so it could like get the attention of the people, and it did, but it was just a little heavy. Like, who wants to collect pieces with blood and put it in their house, the actual blood on the wall? So I still want to like have the blood. Like I got like this marker in which I can feel the blood inside, and then I write. Sort of like how those old pens, you dip it in the ink and then write. Because I was listening to Tupac, and he was like, I got a letter from my road dog written in blood, said, please show a play of love. So it was like, that's where I got the idea from. So I'll be doing like text or like calligraphy with the blood. So I'm gonna keep it going, but just changing it a little bit. The leather is the skin, because it's the hide of the animal, of the cow. So it's like this, and then I like to use a lot of black and brown on leathers, because I'm touching on like the skin. So we have the blood, we have the mind, we have the body, the Black body being mistreated in America and things like that. And then the narrative will be, I'll paint something on top that's like a story from like a comic book that's like um Mysterio or whatever from Spider-Man. His whole thing is illusions. And I feel like with like a lot of people that we deal with, things ain't always what they seem. A lot of deception from people that you deal with, and also like the government and stuff like that. So I like make that connection by using that comic character. And it's kind of like if you was giving medication to somebody, you put it into the ice cream, it's like easier to take. So that's kind of like why I'm trying to soften up the approach so it could be more relatable to more people, like kids and everything.
Well, I don't know how to follow up that, but my new work, generally I've been, using music, performance art, visual art by the way of graphic design, things like that. But this new work that I've been, embarking on explores photography, the history of photography, and how it has been weaponized against African Americans in America. And I'm particularly focusing on a series of controversial historical photographs. you know, as a multidisciplinary artist, I'm very interested in, you know, creating intersectional counter narratives that not only interrogate, but also challenge the historical over-policing and exploitation of Black people, Black bodies, and how that all, you know, facilitates, perpetuates, and even in like a lot of cases legitimizes the continual subjugation of Black people as a collective in this country. So, you know, for me, prisons are just, you know, one system where it plays itself out, but for, you know, I also see it playing itself out in all areas of people activity. So you can see some digital tintype processes, you know, like these alternative photograph processes, modern photography, Photoshop, wet plate casing to preserve these images where I will be inserting myself into these historical photographs. And it's my hope that I will be, in this particular series, be able to reparent the figure that's featured and show the tender care and protection that Black girls verily experience in America.
And it definitely dope on both my peers' parts. For myself, you know, in 2020, I had the opportunity to do a 5-state billboard campaign with Just Leadership USA, which is an organization that does advocacy based around prison reform. And that 5-state billboard campaign was themed around using images by myself, artwork, to, you know, highlight the COVID-19 virus impact on the prison system across the country. In addition, the Points of Connection residency that Jesse Krimes mentioned earlier about the issues around survivors of crime and violence, people that work in the criminal justice system as district attorneys primarily, and also people who are returning citizens, and seeing how those groups, that triad of groups, can connect and find solutions to criminal justice issues and issues based around violence in communities, particularly in Philadelphia, but across the nation. So those projects, as well as others that I'm engaged in currently, are projects that use art in the front, but really are about shifting narrative and really are about inspiring change in other ways outside of art necessarily. Myself as an artist, I'm also a contemporary artist who's multidisciplinary, and, you know, my practice is strongly shaped by my period of incarceration, in the sense that that was my training ground in art school. I've personally always been an artist, but that period, literally, I learned everything that I needed to learn in that artistic gladiator school that I employ now in the practice of using art as not only a profession, but as well as a lifestyle, and as well as a way to exist in a society while trying to be, while be acting as an agent of social change. So, you know, to me, you know, works that I created while I was incarcerated hold a special place. Those works were created with the barest of materials, and a almost volcanic intensity of spirit that is unparalleled. And you know, I hesitate to say this, but even in the work that I create today, you know what I mean? You know, and I think I kind of echo the sentiments of other formerly incarcerated artists, that we're at least I am constantly searching my soul for that volcanic intensity that I know I can create out of, based upon my relationship to that experience that I was engaged in, or locked in, literally, and seeking to translate that now into the work that I do in society. But those works, I'm surrounded by them, and you know, they give off an energy that is unparalleled. You know.
Yeah, and I agree. I remember when you first came home and me and Craig were here in the studio where I am actually right now. And I just remember you brought over like a bunch of notebooks that were just like filled, I mean, absolutely filled with drawings and collages and just like decades worth of work. And just like when you opened up that book, you know, just one of the books, and you opened it up and I just saw what was in there. I mean, it was one of the most powerful encapsulations of resistance and also like just the power of art. Like it is one of the most formative moments of seeing that amount of work in the way that you've compiled it. That was just really incredibly moving and powerful to see. And I actually think that, you know, it kind of leads in right now. So I think we can open this up for Q&A if people have any questions, but we do have one question, and it kind of dovetails perfectly with what you were just saying, James. And I realized we kind of skipped over this, and this is, you know, we've done these talks so many times that sometimes we forget the very integral parts of our experience and process. But there's a question from Abe that says, how were you, and this is to everyone, but how were you able to create while incarcerated? And do you still have any of the pieces that you made while you were incarcerated? I mean, I know, James, you do.
I can go quickly. I've been trying to keep everything brief. My pieces, James knows this because he would tell me, he's like, your personal development suffers because I'm always taking commissions. So I was always doing like portraits majority for like other incarcerated individuals that would use it as like gifts to send like a portrait to their family, to their girl, to their kids, to their mom, whoever. So like I couldn't really build a body of work because that was what I always was doing, just keep providing those pieces that was getting shipped out. And then that also was my means of survival because I never got like visits or money on the books because I was like a foster kid. So then going into the system, I had no family. So I was able to develop like a business. So that's why all my work would be just me making artwork for everybody else. So I ain't have nothing like left over. And I really wish I did have some work. It was like, yeah, this work from when I was inside. Look how I've grown. You know what I'm saying? Like, but there is no work. It's just the people got it. And me and the type of people that I was giving it to, they probably don't even know where I'm at as an artist. Like, who you know what I'm saying? So,
I was going to say there is a whole
unfortunately-
plethora of work. It's just with other people.
Yeah. And they don't even like know. So it's like, as far as that goes, like, yeah, I don't have no works. It's all over the place.
Well, as far as for me, I do have some poems that I created while I was incarcerated, but I don't know. I think the majority of the time that I was there, I was just, you know, just trying to process having, you know, given birth. And then, you know, one minute I'm giving birth to my son, and the next minute, you know, I'm back at the prison, and just really trying to understand that separation. Like having a life in you one day and then the next day you're not able to see that life or, you know, interact or engage. So that was really difficult, but I did create some poems that I may share and incorporate in some artwork somewhere down the line.
Did any of those poems or writings make their way into some of your final pieces?
It did. It made it
That you
into Ain't I a Woman. Yeah. The first part of the triptych. Yep.
Very nice.
So
And I would say for everyone, for the audience who isn't aware, I encourage you to look up all of these artists. So look up Russell Craig, Mary Elizabeth Enoch Baxter, and James Yaya Huff, because I'm sure it would be wonderful to actually watch Mary's video, which talks about a lot of these issues that she's been bringing up. I'm sorry, James, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no problem. No, I was just going to share. I mean, so I kind of spoke to the question in a previous, you know, exchange. But what I would love to share is that, you know, on a day that, you know, so one, how were we able to create in prison? You know, and I know this is distinct based upon what particular prison incarcerated artists found themselves in. but I know there's kind of a universal experience. And the one thing that is common is that we had to create a way to create art, right? So, very, very universal to the experience of incarcerated artists, we literally have to create the space, the material, and the time to create art, because prison by its very nature is anti-art, right? And definitely anti any type of resistance of any message based thing, right? Or performance, right? So whether it's creating art, or whether it's singing, dancing, etc. So we have to literally create those opportunities and spaces. And usually we are working with the barest of materials, we're working with the barest of time, and we're working with the barest of cooperation of people, of the staff at the prison, and of even sometimes other prisoners, unfortunately. But what happens is we are so genius and so successful that everyone comes on board, right? So, at some point, right? But I'll share this little anecdote based on, do I have works that I created while I was in prison, or just share a story. The day I was scheduled to leave, or prior to the day I was scheduled to leave the prison, I shipped out, various things that I owned while I was in the prison. Other things I literally gave everything away, dispersed all my possessions, with the exception of several books that had literally saved my life, that I continue to read to this day, and also my collection of artistic material. And Jesse had mentioned my sketchbooks, which were 12 to 15 deep, of all sizes, and also my collection of artwork. And literally, if you can imagine this or visualize this in your mind, a person who's just been released from prison, who's literally carrying a bag, an art bag, it has bulky, right? But it has all his treasures of art in it, right? And that is literally the only thing I walked out of the prison with, because I was so afraid that if I mailed it, something would happen, would get lost, would get destroyed, or, the prison wouldn't mail it out. So, I literally clutched those possessions to me as if they were part of my own body. And I literally traveled, for almost 24 hours to return back to this city. And, hundreds of miles, clutching, those artworks. And fortunately, I have them to this day. But just as a final thing, I would just like to say, like, the most amazing thing is about formerly incarcerated artists is we are the art. So when Russell says, like, he didn't necessarily bring stacks of artwork or images outside of the prison, he brought him. You know what I mean? And so, part of our practice and part of what we create is we recreate our very selves. So we become a living artistic practice. We become a living engagement with art. You know what I mean? So in the truest sense of the word, as a lifestyle, as a form of being, which I think is not taught in any institution that teaches art. You know what I mean? That's not looked upon. It's something that you can't really monetize. So, but we practice that. We practice, the total and complete immersion and engagement with the artistic practice and lifestyle. So we, in essence, become part of our own creativity and recreate ourselves in this world and move forward in time. So.
And I think to add to that, too, in the way that, we are the artists, like the way that we come out of these situations, but also I think the way that your story, what that speaks to as well, is that the artworks are very much a part of you.
Absolutely.
Very much a part of us. Like, it's almost inseparable in a way and indistinguishable, at least to me, with the artwork that I made when I was in. Like, when I have to hang Apocalyptine on the wall and nail nails through it, it's like I'm nailing nails through my skin. Like, I feel it with every time I put a nail through it to install that piece. And so it's like, so much blood, sweat, and tears. And I know Craig did a whole show around that title, right? Like, so much of us goes into these works. And I think that also comes from the experience of, like, how difficult it is to
I was thinking about Apocalypse. I'm glad you mentioned the Apocalypse team, because I was thinking about that as we was talking about like the works. And I didn't know if you was going to like touch on it because you got like doing like the moderating thing, but I think it's important because that piece was awesome, and it's like, and it opened so many doors. Like that piece put you in the predicament in which right of return, was put on the table, and then you brought me along. So I really love that. I think that's like my favorite piece of yours. I like your new stuff, but Apocalypse Teen is heavy in a lot of ways. How you got it out and things like that. So it's just it's crazy. And then the Blood, Sweat, and Tears, you mentioned that, and then I like James had sent me a letter. He's like, I can't wait to see all the murals, because James painted a lot of murals for mural arts in Philadelphia and things like that on the inside while he did many years inside. He was like, he wrote me a letter, said, I can't wait to see all the murals I did, my Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I had Blood, Sweat, and Tears show going on, and I'm like, yo, I got a show. I just called it Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Like, crazy you said that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's always like a connection. You know what I mean? And I also like how James is touching on like the art is us, like with Mary. I spent some time with Mary, and it's like, she is her art.
She's literally becoming her own art. She's photographing herself in historical
Black people. So when I'm wearing her start loving Black people shirt, right? It's like her telling the people. It's on my chest, but it's like in that energy. And we had a little conversation before this went like live and things. And it's like, yeah, it's like an energy. So, and I'm appreciative to be on this journey with y'all in this community, because it's something else to see where we came from to where we going, and art is like the vessel and the tool. Is really interesting.
And just to speak to that, like objects, from prison, creative objects from prison, like this right here is one of the aprons, many aprons that have come and gone, but this is the last one over several years that I used to paint with. And unfortunately, several artists that I worked with while I was incarcerated on murals had died. In the process of us creating works. They had died from natural causes. They had died from disease. They had died from sometimes other incidents. And this is an artist by the name of Joe Miller, and he's an older guy, and he had painted just prolifically for so many years. And so when I had his apron, and I took a piece of it and painted his portrait on it, and then I sewed it to my apron. You know what I mean? So, and this is one of the objects that I took from, the prison with me, that I left prison with, and it hangs in my apartment now. And, when I paint, this is what I paint with. So, just that spirit, that continuation, of art. The merger between art and life is seamless, for many of us, and for all of us, I would presume, but for definitely many formerly incarcerated artists, there's no distinction between the two.
Absolutely.
And so we have one final question, I think, before we wrap up, and anyone can kind of touch on this. Feel free. So, do you think if you were not confined, you would or would have become an artist, or your work of art wouldn't be as it is? So basically, if we were never incarcerated, right, or if you were never incarcerated, do you think that you still would have become an artist?
I would have to say that absolutely. I can speak to that quick because, like, absolutely, I was an artist because when I was very young, and I was in the foster care system since I was 5 years old. So by the time I was 7, I started like drawing and things like that. So comic books, and that's why I use a lot of comic analogies, because I was in the comic books heavily way before the movies and stuff came out, before a lot of people know about Marvel, DC, and things like that. And then I would try to mimic or recreate like the comic characters and stuff like that. Then I moved on to like Jet magazines and the Beauty of the Week or whoever the celebrity would be, LL Cool J and things like that, and try to do portraits and stuff. So it's like I would say like the experience in the prison like sharpened it and made that like passion stronger by meeting community. We go back to like having community, other fellow artists that not only have like that same thing in common with the art, but then also the struggle that we go through. So it was two motivational forces that like we have a common like connection with each other. So and then it's like a lot of foolishness, and then it started becoming like for myself personally, then I started thinking that I wanted to be an artist for a living. And I knew that getting out of prison, I wouldn't be able to get jobs and things like the easy being a felon and stuff like that. So so the art was always there, but then just the importance of the art became stronger as time went on. So it was good to team up with certain people. So I think I would have always been an artist, but that path, you just get deeper with it like you would do anything. Like a little kid, he played basketball, then one day he in the NBA. It get to another level, no matter what you doing, who you are. So well, I think we always artists.
Yeah, I know with me, I was considered a child artistic prodigy growing up, and unfortunately, my life took a turn based upon environment, based upon family upbringing, based upon social conditions, and based upon bad decisions on my part, as well as a teenager. And but that didn't have it necessarily determine, my existence as an artist. But what it did do, what my engagement with the carceral state, my engagement with the streets as we call them, what those things did do is they shaped me and shaped my practice in a way that is so unique and so core life oriented that there is no comparison in any other way that I could have became an artist. So, I like to think that, art chose me. I didn't necessarily choose art. And as well, I truly know that without those experiences, I wouldn't have the force behind the art that I create. I would, as I mentioned earlier, I think what we see now, as far as what passes for art and creativity, is a lot of recycled things, ideas and images. And I like to think that what I bring, based upon a very unique life experience that hasn't been highlighted, that hasn't been pushed to the forefront of contemporary art, that unique life experience brings forth a very, very unique voice, a unique vision for what art is and what art can be, And before I close, I'd like to just say shout out to the amazing Dr. Nicole Fleetwood, and shout out to the amazing Kate Fowle, director of MoMA PS1, for marking time on both their parts, for the authorship of Marking Time, the book, and for the exhibit, for the inaugural exhibit. So without either of those two giant geniuses and super sisters, much of this would not be possible as well.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And I want to echo both James and Russell. As a child, I was always into art as well. And yeah, I'm glad that things panned out.
So are we. Honestly. Yeah, so I think that is all of the time that we have. I just wanted to thank each of you for coming out, and thank you, James, for shouting out Nicole and Kate, who have just done amazing things for all of us on this panel, and a bunch of other artists across the country. And so, with that, I think we're going to close out. Thank you, James and Craig and Mary, and thank everyone at the New Ark Museum, and really, truly appreciate it. And I hope everyone enjoyed. Thank you.